Greetings, everybody. We're really glad that you all were able to join us today. My name is Bill Guyton, and I'm with the Fine Chocolate Industry Association, or FCIA. I'm here with a number of colleagues and partners, and we're really excited to announce that Zero Alliance, the launch of our new program in Madagascar. I'm going to be co-moderating this session today with Liz Toomey, and I thought maybe I'd turn it over to you, Liz, for a moment just to introduce yourself, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the agenda for today.
Sure, thanks, Bill. So my name is Liz Toomey, and I'm the Program and Communications Specialist in the Environment Office at USAID Madagascar. And I've sort of been a part of this co-creation process from the start.
And by the start, we mean probably many months, actually. And
since June 2020, to be exact.
And despite COVID and all of the other complications, we're really excited that this 5-year project is now underway, and we're anxious to get started. Maybe I'll say a few words more about FCIA, and Liz, I'll turn it over to you. As I mentioned, FCIA is a trade association. We have about 300 company members, and we represent about the top 5 to 10% tier of the chocolate market. I think what makes the Fine Chocolate Industry Association different and unique is that we really do focus on quality and flavor. And that's a perfect match for the Zero program in Madagascar. So this is a unique partnership with U.S. Agency for International Development and our implementing partner, Catholic Relief Services, as well as our company members and our sister organization, Heirloom Cacao Preservation Fund. Madagascar Cacao is so unique and special, and over the next hour or so, you'll hear from our partners on exactly the different types of roles that they'll be playing in the program and what makes cacao or chocolate from Madagascar so unique and special. This project also really fits in well with FCIA's strategic plan. We, of course, provide services, educational opportunities, business services to our members. We also work a lot on communications and promotion, the development of quality standards, but also looking at the supply chain and how we can strengthen and improve that. So this project in Madagascar fits very nicely with that last objective of really helping to strengthen the supply chain, working with our company members. And we're just so excited, Liz, that to be partnered with U.S. Agency for International Development for a number of reasons. You bring such a great track record of experience working in developing countries, with farmer groups, with development agents, other development agencies and nonprofits, as well as the environmental piece, which I think is really so vitally important, particularly in Madagascar. So again, we're just thrilled to be part of this, and I'll turn it over to you, Liz, to say a few words and then to start introducing some of the panelists.
Thanks, Bill, and we are super excited to be working with FCIA and all of our partners in the Zero Alliance. So maybe for those participants who aren't familiar with USAID, I'll just give a brief summary of who we are as an organization. As Bill said, we're the United States Agency for International Development. So we're an independent federal government agency that works closely with the U.S. State Department under the direction of the Secretary of State. We're present in over 100 countries. We provide development assistance in a number of different sectors, including health, food security, disaster assistance, democracy and governance, environment, agriculture, and a number of other sectors, just depending on the needs of the particular country. And in Madagascar, we've been working for over 37 years. And we focus our main programs in the environment sector, economic development, public health, and food security. So this particular project fits in really well in both our food security, our agriculture, and our economic development sector. So it's a really unique program, and we're very excited to have finally awarded it. So thanks, Bill.
Great, Liz. And we're now going to start introducing our panelists and hear from them. But there's 3 takeaways that we hope that everyone listening today will consider. First of all, that CIRO really is innovative. It's a new kind of partnership. A lot of times what we've seen is public-private partnerships with large corporations and multinationals. That's not this. These are smaller companies. They are focused on quality. A lot of them are very much integrated into the value chain all the way back to the farm level. And so that's one of the things that makes it unique. And you'll hear how each of these companies will be engaging on the program. The second thing is that each partner is unique, that we're going to be testing different kinds of models of development. There'll be a focus on environment, of course, but also on social things, on social aspects and education. And lastly, we want to leave you with some information on how you can be involved and stay in contact with us over this 5-year journey, where we're going to be learning a lot. We want to share that with you, the positive aspects as well as the challenges as we move forward. And we want to be as open and inclusive as possible. So with that, Liz, back to you to introduce the panelists.
Sure. So I am very pleased to introduce Sulu Arivelu. She works with me at USAID Madagascar. And I'll actually let her introduce herself and tell us a little bit more about her role in the CIRO Alliance. So over to you, Sa.
Thank you, Liz. Hello, everyone. So I'm Salui Sulwarvelu. I'm the Mission Environmental Officer for USAID Madagascar, and I sit in the Sustainable Environment and Economic Development Office in USAID Madagascar. So for the CIRO Alliance in particular, I am the Agreement Officer's Representatives, which is a very complicated USAID word to say that I'm in charge of the administration of the award, and I'm in charge of making sure that the award implementation is going smoothly. Thank you.
It's not a small job, but Salui is very capable, and I'm so glad to have her leading the ship. So second question. So from your perspective at USAID Madagascar, so what do you think the main reason that USAID Madagascar funded this project, and why is this a unique program? How is it different from other programs that we have at USAID Madagascar?
Well, so as I mentioned earlier, I work in the Sustainable Environment and Economic Development Office. And in fact, at the beginning, when we launched this, I would say, initiative, we received several concept notes, but the CIRO Alliance was in particular the one which attracted us the most, because it has a promising potential for sustainable development impact. And there's also the use of the market-based approach instead of, the classical way, the classic development approach of assisting the communities and the farmers first, depending on what value chain the communities want to do, and then accompany them for looking for a market, which is classical, but which has not been very successful. So for the CIRO Alliance, it has this market-based approach, which is very promising, and we hope it's going to be very successful. And finally, the potential to increase the reach and the efficiency of USAID Madagascar's development assistance investments. This is something that we also are confident that the CIRO Alliance is going to implement. So as the CIRO Alliance is going to have significant impacts in terms of livelihood and economic impacts, it's kind of similar to the projects that we implement here with the mission. And also because the CIRO Alliance is going to have significant impact on biodiversity. As you can see on the map here, It's going to be implemented in areas where we have high biodiversity value. Then it's kind of similar as well to the projects that we are implementing in the Environment and Economic Development Office. However, Zero is so particular in many ways, but I think the most important particularity is its plan to implement a well-established business model for developing cocoa and spice production with farmers and cooperatives. So that's a particularity in those areas that is unique for Zero, and it's going to be a sustainable approach. The approach that they explained was proves to be sustainable. So that's what we are hoping to implement with the Zero Alliance. And I think that that's the most particular point regarding Zero.
Thank you so much for that answer. So, I mean, I think the takeaway from that is that the Zero Alliance, this model of cacao production in fine cacao production in Madagascar, we're hoping it becomes a model to other countries, to other parts of Madagascar, and perhaps even to other industries. That's really great. So thank you, Salui. I'm going to move it over to our other USAID colleague, Robert Cohen. Rob, will you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your role within USAID?
Sure. I'm Rob Cohen. I'm a physician in USAID's Global Health Bureau here in Washington, and I'm also the co-coordinator of the Hearth program that within it includes Zero is the first award of many that we expect to come over the coming months. We're really excited about Zero, and the reason that we started the Hearth program, I think as many of us know, many of the landscapes around the world are really being degraded quickly. And just to put it very bluntly, humanity's attempts to save many of the world's precious landscapes, we are losing. And USAID recognizes that we have to scale up proven, innovative approaches and really do everything that we talk about in development, namely cross-sectoral, working with the private sector, working with great implementers all together if we're going to beat this challenge. And so Hearth is one example of public-private cross-sectoral development. In this particular case, adapted to Madagascar, it's conservation and delicious cacao production at the same time to help promote the well-being of people alongside the well-being of the planet.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you for that, Rob. Setting the bar really high with this. It's really great. And so I think you may have answered all of my questions in that. So can you explain a little bit more, what does Hearth mean? What is the acronym? I think people probably like wondering, what is Hearth?
Sure. So Hearth is heart and earth together because the well-being of humans and the planet are interdependent. It also stands for health ecosystems and agriculture for resilient, thriving societies. But basically, in order to save all these landscapes, many of which the degradation brings new infectious diseases to humans. In fact, Hearth was in part started because of Ebola outbreaks in the Congo, as well as a plague outbreak in Madagascar in 2017 that probably came from the degradation of various forests in Madagascar. And so the public sector knows it can't do it alone. The private sector knows it can't do it alone. And in fact, as many people probably know, by some estimates, 80 to 90% of financial flows into developing countries is from the private sector. And so the public sector recognizes that and in this particular partnership, maybe I'll end with this, the reason we're so excited about this is all of the people that have been working on this, including, so we've had a great prime implementer, CRS has just been incredible. The broad USAID team that I needed to give credit for, there's about 20 people in Washington, and Liz and Saw at the mission have just been outstanding, as well as have their colleagues. And then the private sector partners have also brought that energy and the innovation that we expect from the private sector. I would say Zero has exceeded our lofty expectations. And what we've seen in other sectors, my sector and health, the third big plank of Hearth is rigorous measurement. And in my sector of health, we've shown that if you do certain interventions in some countries, you can really capture the attention of policymakers to provide a lot more funding for the similar goal. So our ambition is to really show that you can conserve forests and promote people's well-being and grow delicious cacao on top of it all, and that private sector and public sector can work together to benefit people and the planet, that the well-being of people and the environment are not in conflict, but in fact are interdependent. One Health would be a term that is often used to describe that. And so our big ambition with Zero, as well as the other hearths that are coming down the road, is to really show that this model can work and that it can work at scale. And I, as USAID Washington team, just really want to thank our private sector partners, FCIA and Heirloom Cacao Preservation Fund as well. I mean, it's a consortium that gives me every confidence that we will achieve the well-being for the cacao, the lemurs, and the local people. Back to you, Liz.
Great, thank you so much, Rob. There's just one more small point I want to make about this project. The reason why USAID is very interested in working with the private sector on these types of projects, because in our traditional model, we have a 5-year funded assistance project, and it may have a follow-on project at the end, it may not, but either way, after 5 years, we hope there's some sustainability, but it's not a guarantee. But in this model, working with the private sector, I mean, the private sector, they're establishing, this is their business, this is their livelihood. They're not going anywhere. So when USAID, after 5 years of funding ends and, we may have to move on to another project, we know that the work that's started under the Pseudo Alliance will be sustained through the private sector involvement. So I think that's a really important part of this type of project. And with that, I will move over to our next partner, Jim Hazen of Catholic Relief Services. So Jim, can you explain a little bit about your role in the Pseudo Alliance?
Sure. Hi, thanks, Liz. So I'm Jim Hazen. You can see it, James Hazen, up on the screen there. I am the chief of party for the Zero Alliance project with CRS, and I've actually been working in Madagascar for over 7 years now. And I'm incredibly excited about the potential of the Zero program, especially through the partnerships that we've created with USAID and the private sector, as well as some of our research institutions like the Centre Val Bio down in Makeminefying and Red Bristol Zoo as well, to really do something a bit differently than we've done in the past. But I work with Catholic Relief Services, which is an international organization based out of the US. The CRS has been in Madagascar for over 50 years, and typically we really are there to serve the most vulnerable, and we do a lot of different activities, including food security, environment, education, health, water and sanitation and hygiene, among others. So we've been in Madagascar for a long time. We're there to stay, and we really hope that we can bring some of our experience to this as well.
Great, thank you, Jim. So how will CRS build on existing work that you've already been doing in country? And what excites you and CRS most about this project? Because it's a pretty exciting project.
It is, and I think the thing that, and a couple of people have said it, but I kind of want to sort of reiterate it. It's that, the private sector can't do it all alone. The public sector can't do it all alone. We NGOs can't do this all alone. It's really about partnership. And I think having worked on various programs throughout the years, this is a way of working where the market is really driving this opportunity to restore land, to help farmers gain income, to help the private sector expand their business. And by doing that, we're creating jobs, we're helping soil, we're helping biodiversity. It's bringing the different elements together that sometimes don't always come together, and recognizing, I think, what we are good at, and also what we can leverage from other partners. I think, one thing that I often say to people is, what I think is fascinating is, how do we make trees, for example, really valuable to people? In Madagascar, we know there's a lot of deforestation, but people are doing that to survive, whether it's for charcoal or agriculture, etc. But it's amazing when you see cacao, which is a tree, when it has value, people are going to keep it. When you have other spices in this integrated agroforestry system, you've got cinnamon, which is a tree, cloves, which are a tree. You have fruits, which are trees. And then you take something like vanilla, which needs a tree. And some people don't know this, but you need vanilla, it needs a tree to wrap around. Black pepper, you know, it needs a tree to wrap around. So by building on this model that we've been working with farmers and the private sector's been doing for years as well, it's really adding value to these trees in their land that they're going to want to, people want to protect, they want to expand. And by doing that, they're expanding both production potential and also habitat for, you know, our lovely the lemurs, among other biodiversity. But, you know, CRS, we really are, our main purpose is really to focus on, you know, farmers and the community. We are out there working with smallholder farmers. There might be, you know, in this particular program, we're going to work with 2,000 of them. We know that in some cases, it's not easy for the private sector to get out there and work with thousands and thousands of farmers to expand their business right away. It could take a lot more time and resources sometimes than they have right away, but by building on our experience and our connections and our relationships, we can quickly move in. We can work with the private sector and farmers that we know and really support the farmers to do what they need to do, as well as the private sector. Just one last thing is there was a map up there, but you can see we'll be working up in the north, which is where we've got Bertil, I think will be speaking, or John Kehoe, as well as Ryan from Beyond Good. They're currently working on cacao up in that region and have a lot of experience. And I know they have some ideas on how to both expand production as well as some activities to support the community around education and financial education. So we're excited to be able to help them there. And down in the southeast, which is a little bit of a newer area for some of the cacao, but there's a lot of spice production. But the potential is huge. And in fact, we've already started a lot of the cacao down there and seen it grow quite well. So these are the two areas that we're going to be working in. And it is just incredibly exciting to see both the motivation of farmers, the motivation of just communities in general, of our private sector partners, our research partners, and especially a lot of young people who are really getting excited about what they can do to add to all of this. So sorry for the long answer, but it is exciting and can kind of talk a lot about Tsuru.
Don't apologize for the answer. It was great and very thorough. And yeah, I mean, it's a really exciting project, and I hope we can capture as many details as possible in this webinar. There are a lot of components to it, but thank you, Jim. But with that, I'll hand it back over to Bill to moderate the second half.
Great, thank you, Liz. And I just wanted to express my thanks to Jim, to you, for all of the heavy lifting you've done on putting the program document together and working with all of the diverse partners to make it all happen. So, you know, we just couldn't have done it without you. And our thanks to you and the team at CRS for all that you're doing. We're looking forward to working with you over the next few years. I have the pleasure to introduce the private sector partners and our sister organization, the Heirloom Cacao Preservation Fund, so you can hear more specifically, as Liz was saying, about some of the specific activities that they hope to accomplish under the Zero Alliance. And I'd like to start, first of all, with Ryan Kelly of Beyond Good. And Ryan, I'm just looking at some of these incredible photographs that your team gave to us, and it makes you almost want to step into the screen so you can be in these beautiful valleys and lush tropical climates. But I know that working in Madagascar is quite difficult and challenging, and you know, your company is extraordinary, what you've been able to accomplish there already. And I just thought it'd be interesting if you could share with those of the people on the line about your commercial model and development model in Madagascar.
Sure. Thanks, Bill. For those of you that haven't met Beyond Good yet, I'll give a short introduction and an overview. So Beyond Good works at origin in Madagascar to produce fine chocolate. We run the gamut. We work with farmers growing cacao, providing technical assistance and processing and transformation, as well as we operate a factory in partnership with a local industrial partner. So we're doing bean to bar out of Madagascar and trying to unlock the possibilities that brings. So just to unpack the model a little bit, I'll start with the mission and then go into the history, and happy to unpack a little bit more in Q&A if there's questions. But the Beyond Good's mission is to change the way the world experiences chocolate from the farmer to the consumer. And that entails trying to reimagine how the chocolate industry is experienced. And to kind of hone in on a couple of points that we're looking to improve upon, I think it's good to understand the history where Beyond Good was founded by former Peace Corps volunteers. Tim McCullum is the co-founder and still current CEO, leading the charge. And he started Beyond Good really to stay connected with Madagascar. It's a country he was really passionate about and wanted to maintain the connection. But as you go deeper into chocolate, you learn that a couple things. Madagascar has really exceptional cacao, and that's not known widely in general population. You learn pretty quickly that globally, the cacao industry isn't always friendly to farmers, and people have really difficult livelihoods working to produce cacao that you can find in Western supermarkets. And third, you find that not only is it always friendly to farmers, but it's not always friendly to the environment. And these things seemed, they're surprises. You think of chocolate, it's a product we all love. And why is the industry structured this way? So in our way, we kind of said, how could you flip that upside down? How could you do things a little bit differently? So what would it look like to promote chocolate on flavor? And can you bring Madagascar's flavor to the forefront? So while I think the vast majority of chocolate globally, not necessarily in fine chocolate, but chocolate is really commodity, where you're masking unique flavor notes of origins, where you don't have a lot of traceability, where you have a lot of milk and sugar. Beyond Good's trying to say, how do you try to bring those flavor notes forward? How do you bring single origin chocolate to the market? How do you introduce customers to the experience of eating chocolate at different origins, and especially the unique chocolate out of Madagascar? I think some of the other questions we're trying to grapple with is how do you work more directly with farmers? How do you make that fair with farmers? And how do you involve them in more of the processing? So we work with 3 cooperatives and 2 large farmers, and we engage them. We're providing technical assistance. We learn a lot from them, and we ask them to partake in the transformation. And we set the quality standards high, and we try to keep pushing them higher and do new things to try to improve the flavor of the cacao before it even comes in the chocolate factory. And I think that's been one of the more motivating parts of the business for me, and a part we're fairly happy with building on in the Tsiru project, because a lot of our cacao farmers have become cacaopreneurs, where it's become their livelihood. We've been able to provide steady purchasing month on month at a fair price that's motivated this to become, the core of their livelihood. And they've developed well in their communities, and they engage us as partners. And we've been working with the same cooperatives for 10 years, and looking to continue building on that. And as a great side effect, but I think something that helps the positive momentum of the model build forward is as the cacao farmers find more stable livelihoods in growing and producing cacao, it helps them bring more value to their forest. In Madagascar, cacao is a shade-grown tree, so it grows well within native forest. So as you're growing cacao, you need to preserve the forest to ensure that you have shade. And it has positive synergies with not only conserving existing forest, but also growing more forest and expanding. So right now we've put in satellite measurements and mapped via GPS to try to see what's the forest coverage of the existing parcels and how that's going to grow over the next 3 to 5 years. Quite excited to see how that evolves. And as a kind of side benefit, we've learned there's a lot of endangered endemic wildlife that either live in or pass through the forest. So in Mbanza, you have natural forest, which is home to endangered lemur species, for example. And we found 5, if not 6 of them pass through the cacao parcels as they're going between the native forest parcels, and they'll snack on some cacao. So lemurs like chocolate too, and they move into the natural forest. In you know, for us, I think it helps to bring the whole story together, where we're trying to bring flavor, we're trying to engage the farmers, and we're trying to do it in a way that's friendly for the environment. The last piece on that I'll touch on is more, well, we've always produced at origin, and we strive to do as much of that in Madagascar as possible. We in partnership commissioned a factory 3 years ago with SMTP, which is a large local industrial partner, and you know, it's one of the most modern chocolate factories in Africa. Flipping kind of the industry upside down, where I think 70% of the world's cacao comes from Africa, but 99% is produced in the United States or Europe. And we're kind of in a journey just to say, hey, what does it look like to produce at origin? You know, if within 20 to 30 days after that cacao has come off the tree, we can get it in the factory and really work on that flavor and understand what's happening there. If we can bring the farmers into the factory to encourage them to improve processing techniques, what does that look like? So it's trying to create a different dynamic of how chocolate's produced, and one we're excited about developing over the next couple of years as a CIRO member.
Great, Ryan. Thank you for that. And I have a quick follow-on question for you before we turn to the other panelists. But could you tell us more specifically how this program is going to change the way you do things, or will it? What's new and innovative for Beyond Good as far as the engagement on the CIRO Alliance?
So a few things on that. You know, the partners in this, it's not 1 + 1 = 2. I think we, as Jim was saying, we've brought together people with different backgrounds. So we look at learning from other partners. Bertil, for example, some of the spice companies that we've been talking to, and seeing how they run outreach and how they're providing technical assistance. So I think there's great inter-exchange amongst partners. We're excited to see if we can replicate our model. Geographically, if we're going to change the way the world experiences chocolate, we need to scale that. And this gives us a great opportunity to see if we can work through the CIRO Alliance in the Southeast to introduce cacao and provide some of the same outreach, but probably adapt it to that context. And I think as a growing and learning company, we're open to be challenged. We're open to the rigorous metrics that Robert was introducing earlier, and trying to see where we're wrong and where we can learn and where we can grow as an organization.
Fantastic. And what makes Madagascar chocolate taste different? What's the flavor like?
It's really difficult to do this on a webinar, huh? The verbal explanation is it's got really unique, bright, fruity notes. And what I'd encourage everyone to do to make sense of bright, fruity notes is if you can go to a supermarket and pick up or order online, you know, a 70% Madagascar single origin bar, and find a bar where you don't see the origin, that's 70% chocolate, and break off a couple of squares, take a bite of the nondescript chocolate first, taste it, have a sip of water, and then taste Malagasy chocolate. And I love watching people's eyes light up when they've tasted chocolate for the first time. People smile, they get a little giggly, and there's just a different flavor note. And you've got to experience it to learn it. So I encourage everyone to do that. And I encourage everyone to taste chocolate of all different origins. I think Malagasy chocolate has a very unique and to many people are very preferable. But I think part of the fun is just tasting different chocolates and really understanding what chocolate is. I love a good Snicker bar from time to time, but once you start tasting fine chocolate, it's an experience. So I hope everyone enjoys continuing.
Great, thank you, Ryan. I'd like to now turn to our next two speakers, John Kehoe and Bertil Atkinson. And we wanted to have both of you speak to us together just because there's a relationship between the two companies, and it's a different value chain that Ryan was just talking about. So first of all, I'd like to turn it over to John and Bertil just to tell us a little bit more about your companies and your interest in the CIRO Alliance. So maybe John, maybe we start with you first and then hear from Bertil.
Great. Thanks very much, Bill. And just to reintroduce myself, my name is John Kehoe. I'm Director of Sustainability for Guittard Chocolate. And we're a 152-year-old family-run chocolate company, owned and operated in the San Francisco Bay Area. Well, just to riff off of what Ryan was just saying and provide some more perspective on Madagascar, really, Madagascar cocoa, and particularly, Bertil, Atkinson's, cocoa from Madagascar really blew open the single origin chocolate market, 15, 20 years ago. It has a flavor that nobody knew. Everyone thought chocolate tastes like chocolate, right? It tastes, dark brown and chocolatey. And then along came this Madagascar, chocolate and cocoa beans that chocolate makers could use. And wow, it's that fruit forward note that's become much more common today, from many origins, not like Madagascar, they're all unique in their own way. But to give perspective, really Madagascar really helped create and drive the early fine chocolate market in many ways. And it's a point Gary Guittard has made about Madagascar chocolate and cocoa, because it's just so unique and so different than what everybody knew up to that point. So just jumping in, we're really excited to work with the CIRO partners and with USAID and CRS that have such great experience in development globally, and in Madagascar. We really have really excited to learn together. We've been in cocoa. We've been working with Bertil for over 15 years, not quite 20, but close to it. And,
2003.
Was that Bertil?
Since 2003.
Since 2003, exactly.
Yeah, as you said. And back then, nobody wanted cacao from Madagascar.
Right.
You were our first client.
Yeah.
And it grew. And now, actually, 100% of the American companies are buying from us. And to this day, and I heard too much talking about Madagascar cacao, because there is no such thing about it's Tanzania or it's different from one place to the other, the flavor. And we make maybe 2% of the national production, and we supply 90% of the chocolate makers worldwide. It's something to be said too.
Yeah, that's interesting, Bertil. That you have. We generalize about Madagascar cacao, but it
it's
changes
a mistake
from region to region, probably.
Everybody's using my cacao in the US, and it's different from, there is terroir and there are ways to process it. And unfortunately, Madagascar cacao is mostly a commodity without any specifics. What I like about CIRO is the possibility to encourage people to diversify. Cacao, the prices are too low, and education is one important parameter that CIRO is helping us to achieve. Education in general, but also education about agronomics, about to use better the land and diversify the crops.
It's a good point, and I think that's a centerpiece of the program, is looking at diversification, looking at how in an agroforestry system you can get an income from different kinds of tree crops, or as one of the former speakers said about vanilla or peppers that are vines that need trees to grow on. So it's I think a really good model to look at. It's interesting though. I think the models that you're looking at between what Beyond Good is doing versus the Atkinson is that you have a larger farm with farmers that also supply you. I think the model that Beyond Good is working with through cooperatives and in diverse areas. So we'll be
a very good model too.
Yes, yeah, they're both very good models, and I think we'll have some great learnings from both of those supply chains. So John, what other things do you hope that Guittard will gain from being a partner? in Zero.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. A couple of thoughts. We talk about Madagascar cocoa and how unique it is and how much we all love it. Madagascar is also known, it's known for lemurs. It's known for beautiful, landscapes and people, but it's also known for severe, deforestation and poverty. And so while we've been buying beautiful cocoa from Bertil for many years, and have great confidence in his stewardship of the land and his care and support for the communities, we're really excited to be able to do more, and to leverage and amplify that good work that Bertil has done, and do so, together with the public sector, or with USAID and Catholic Relief Services, and all their experience, And one of really the central piece of our work with Zero Alliance will be building a school and vocational training center out of recycled plastic, collected plastic bricks made of recycled plastic, collected in the community. And it's just a really neat way to clean up, and have a low cost environmental construction material. And the school will focus on basic education and language skills, including French. It creates job opportunities, for youth and for adults, as well as vocational training around environmental and income diversification, around economic opportunities for women and for youth. And we're really excited to have that kind of impact, in the communities and not just on the farm. And also have that environmental component, when these farmers are looking at income diversification, that they do so in ways that are beneficial and support the environment, as well as their family's health and the community.
Great, thank you, John. And I'm just keeping an eye on the time, and I want to make sure and leave enough time for Anne to speak. So I'd like to move on now to Anne Zajac, who is the Executive Director of the Heirloom Cacao Preservation Fund. And HCP is the sister organization of FCIA, and we're really excited that HCP is also a partner in this project. And Anne, maybe I'll turn it over to you just to tell us a little bit more about what HCP is and why is it important, and particularly in Madagascar.
Thanks, Bill. As Bill noted, we're a sister organization of the FCIA. I feel like a few of you participants on the call have probably heard me give my little intro before. So the HCP is a nonprofit organization. We were founded back in 2012 in partnership with the Fine Chocolate Industry Association and United States Department of Agriculture's Agricultural Research Service. And our mission is to discover, identify, and preserve fine flavor heirloom cacao for the preservation of biological diversity and empowerment of farming communities. So our mission is this project, I like to say. We are completely in line and so excited to be a part of it. So heirloom, what also was noted many times before, heirloom varietals are important for biodiversity conservation and smallholder farmers, because these heirloom cacao, which is essentially Madagascar cacao, we have Bertil is an heirloom designee of ours. They grow, as stated again before by Ryan and a few others, they grow well in shade, they grow harmoniously with other crops, they allow farmers to diversify their income, and so we're excited to be a part of that. HCP has 16 designees, heirloom designees around the world. As I just noted, Bertil is one of them. And those designees represent 3,080 small cacao farmers around the world. So we, over the past 3 years, we have supported 6 of our 16 designees on projects to develop nurseries and experimental plots to support their preservation of their own unique heirloom cacao on the ground. The way that heirloom designees are selected is based on flavor analysis. We have an internationally acclaimed tasting panel that is not just looking for good chocolate, it's looking for cacao that is exceptional. They like to use we like to use the term diamonds of cacao. They're looking for something that is the most unique, the most complex flavor, but has balance and has clarity, because we believe that certain cacao should be heirloom, saved for generations, and to preserve the diversity of cacao. So we could so easily turn around and lose all fine cacao if the economics change to be even worse for farmers. So the value of HCP is helping to spread the message that fine flavor cacao, it needs to be saved.
Great. And what particularly will HCP be doing within the Zero program? What will be the activities?
So we have a few activities. One is working on the preservation of the diversity of cacao genetics, or I should say, mapping the cacao genetics of Madagascar. That's one activity, but another one of ours is creating a model. As I just noted, the HCP has designated 16 designees around the world. To achieve the designation, the tasting panel performs a blind flavor analysis and are looking for those diamonds of cacao. And for every HCP designation, USDA ARS completes a genetic analysis for the trees, with the long-term goal of determining a link between flavor and genetics. But so currently the heirloom designation is based on specific trees that are identified and selected by the farmer for the submission, which makes the use of the HCP mark complicated and kind of limits the value to the farmer. So through this program, one objective of ours is to pilot a landscape approach of HCP designation, looking for specific terroirs instead of specific trees. So we would like to work with Atkinson's and Beyond Good to essentially bring more commercial viability to HCP designation, really building up the entire, as we've said, building up the entire soil to store value chain in Madagascar.
Great, fantastic, Anne. Thank you for that explanation. And I'm just looking at the cocoa pods on the screen now, thinking that maybe there's some diamonds in that pile someplace that will be discovered. And so you'll be looking for new designees potentially, and also a new model, a landscape model, so that you will be more easily able to designate areas versus just trees. Is that correct?
I don't want to define it specifically yet, because that's the process that we're going to be doing during the program. But the end goal is to bring more value to our designees, bring more value to the farmer who have these diamonds of cacao.
Perfect. Great. Well, thank you. And we have now just some time remaining for questions and answers. And I can't see the Q&A on my screen because I've got the PowerPoint up. But Liz, maybe I turn it over to you. If you see any of the questions coming up, you could read it out, and we could maybe ask the various panelists to respond.
Sure. So we have a question from Paul Masick, and he asks, can you share more about the objectives, results, and budget levels of the project? He's curious to understand more. And I think we should direct this first question to Jim.
Yes.
Sure. Thank you, Liz, and thank you, Paul, for the question. I know Liz put them into the chat as well, but just to kind of reiterate, well, one we mentioned is to reach 2,000 farmers, and that would be to really look at improving their overall well-being, especially in terms of income, and looking at some of the education and health, particularly around dietary diversity of children in those households. It's also to really conserve the biodiverse ecosystems. So part of that will be monitoring the forest and tree cover in the areas, both around the protected areas, but also particularly in the agricultural lands where people are expanding their agroforestry models. It's also to really look at how to help farmers improve, especially cooperatives, their business models, whether that be organizational management, financial management, also on the production side, and that includes a focus on youth. And also to look at the market side. So really, an FCIA, and maybe Bill wants to speak a bit more to that, but it's also to really look at how are we sharing and promoting the purchase to consumer, by consumers of cacao that is coming from sustainable models, such as the ones that we're promoting through the program. So those are sort of the high level ones, but they are also in the chat that Liz answered. Thanks.
Thank you. So I hope that answers Paul's question. We're happy to elaborate as well if you would like some more follow up. And or Salui, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, so thank you, Liz, for handing me the mic. And I think that Jim has explained everything perfectly. So expected results are not just, in terms of sustainable income generation through viable business models and protected biodiversity in the protected areas, but there's also something which is very important. So Ryan mentioned earlier that in Madagascar, cacaos are shade-grown trees in Madagascar. So in other words, this is allowing the forest to coexist as a complementary ecology to cacao trees under a harmonious agroforestry ecosystem. So from an environmental point of view, this is very important because this increases the biomass and increases the climate resilience of cacao agroforests, whether at the moment or in the longer run as well. So this is something that other countries growing cacao are finding challenging to increase the climate resilience of cacao plantations, but Madagascar has this unique opportunity with the fine cacao variety under its specific ecosystem. Yeah. So I just wanted to add that. Thanks.
Thank you, Salui. We have a couple more questions. So how have you overcome some of the challenges of manufacturing chocolate in Madagascar? I'd imagine weather and humidity would be hard to combat. And how do you see other farms being able to make chocolate in an environment that melts it? I'm going to direct this to Beyond Good, to Ryan.
You overcome challenges with a sense of humor and a little persistence, just generally. But specifically to weather and humidity, our factory, Madagascar, clearly the coast is at coastal sea level. The center of the country is on a plateau with a very high elevation and very low humidity most of the year. So, the Beyond Good team worked with great consultants, and there's good staff and designed international quality food factory, and that's located in the capital where humidity and temperature is more friendly to chocolate. And it's a temperature controlled facility. So we manufacture within the facility and then we ship it out in refrigerated containers so that it's cold chain from the factory delivered to the retail stores where you'd be able to find it on shelf.
Great, thank you for that answer, Ryan. I hope that answers that question. So we have another question from Thomas Forbes. He's asking, what is the average production of cacao per hectare in Madagascar? So this is directed to Bertil or Ryan.
What is the average?
The average production of cacao per hectare in Madagascar.
Don't know.
Okay. Sorry, Thomas, we're not really sure.
Bertil,
thank you for
maybe
the
you could, maybe Bertil, you can speak to your own production per hectare and your organic model.
Yeah, we have 650 hectares planted with cacao. We produce about 300 tons, but it's about 425 hectares that are currently producing. The others are young trees and they are not ready to produce, younger than 5 years old. To give you an idea about the production yield we can achieve, we don't use any chemicals or no help. It's purely shade, and we optimize the land. We grow other crops besides cacao. On the shade trees, we grow peppercorns. We grow plants for our essential oils. So we try to diversify the crops on the same land, shade grown. But we have a better yield than most of the farmers, that's for sure. But most of the farmers should find a way to increase their income. And that's where I come back to that idea of teaching people how to optimize their yield per hectare and not necessarily with cacao.
Yeah, but maybe that's something that we can follow up with and get back to Thomas, because probably we could get you a figure on production per hectare, realizing that, you know, it's a mixed agroforestry system. Are there any other questions, Liz?
Yes, there are 2 more questions. So thank you, Bertil, for that answer. So Jerry Brown asks, where is Madagascar chocolate sold in the US? And especially, where is it sold in enough bulk to be sold to religious organizations and or free trade organizations? I'll leave this one open to whoever has some knowledge on this.
Say, Bertil, maybe, well, Bertil and Ryan and John could talk a little bit about where it's sold in the United States through your marketing chains. What retail stores could people find Madagascar chocolate?
Pretty much everywhere.
Everywhere. And I think the second part of the question was around perhaps philanthropic, if there's, you know, groups that want to get involved. You know, CRS is our implementing partner here. There's also Lutheran World Relief and other groups that sometimes are able to have fundraisers or get involved in supporting sustainable production of food. Do any of you have any kind of programs like that, or know where they could find information about that? Maybe that's something that Jim might be able to answer as well.
If I contribute an idea or two, our largest distribution is via Whole Foods and Sprouts, and Beyond Goods on the shelf. There's other single origin Madagascar's bars on shelf, as well as other origins. But yeah, mainly natural food specialty stores will be able to find them. So if you look at your grocer, there's been some websites that have been posted on the chat too, where you can get a variety of Malagasy single origin bars, just to taste differences as well. And if anybody needs bulk, I'm sure you could reach out to some of the other links that were posted on the chat. You can reach out to Beyond Good as well, and you can always see what type of collaboration is possible.
Fantastic. And I just wanted to put in a plug for Makeminefying.com, which is FCIA's website, which lists over 80 companies that sell direct to consumers. And if you go on there and you look for or do a search for Madagascar or single origin, you should be able to find a lot of those products online. And you can actually, we have all the store's GPS, so you can find locations that are near where you are if you want to support local chocolate shops. Time for maybe one more question.
Sure. So Aaron Andrews asks, can you speak more about new opportunities for U.S. chocolate makers resulting from this project. So potential future opportunities for U.S. chocolate makers with the Pseudo Alliance or as a result of this project.
Maybe I could say something to that. You know, what we are hoping for is collaboration on this project, and there's room for others to participate. We've also looked at potentially having a trade and investment mission at some point during the Zero Alliance, so people could actually see the programs and the program activities in place. So I think this is one of the objectives that we have for Zero is to kind of open the doors to investment and to engagement of other companies through our company partners already here on the panel, but also for others. So we'd be happy to provide more details upon that as we move into the project. I just got a text message from Jim. He wanted again to be able to repeat for me to repeat the last question about that Jerry Brown had asked about the philanthropic, some of the NGOs that work on sustainable food. Jim, you want to mention something about CRS in that light?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on maybe what kind of information they're looking for, but I'd be happy to maybe connect with them after. I think we're going to send out our email addresses, but please do contact me and I'd be happy to follow up on some of the work that we do.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jim. And I know we're at time now, and I just wanted to go back to the 3 takeaways that we had hoped to achieve today. How is this alliance innovative? I think you began to hear some of the activities that the companies want to test, as well as HCP, under the leadership of the entire team. What are the unique aspects that each of the partners brings? So that's why we wanted to have the opportunity for each of the panelists or each of the partners to explain a little bit more about what their role is in the project. And hopefully we brought some clarity to that. And the last thing is how to stay involved. And right now we agreed that Jim Hazen and myself would be the main contacts on this. If you would like to follow up and ask us questions afterwards, or if you'd like to have reports on what we're doing, we would love to share more information with you, the good and the bad, as we go through this process, this learning process on not only sustainable cacao, but also with the spices. So thank you so much for your time today. And again, thanks to all the panelists as well for participating, and looking forward to a great 5-year journey. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you all.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks, everyone. Thanks to all our participants joining.
Bye.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.